Meeting of the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission. Can we have public announcements, please?
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby of this conference room. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please write your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the lobby. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please sign in on that same sheet. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available in the lobby. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Bill, is that your phone?
Apparently so.
Okay, with that, we are going to recess the MAPC and move right into the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals. And the first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes.
Move.
I have a motion by Mr. McKay, a second by Mr. Richardson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. 1, 2, 9. Well, we have one abstention. That would be Shane. So it'd be not 801. Yes, thank you. Yep, that's correct. All right, moving on to agenda item number 2, BZA 2019-00025. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? We will hear this case. Agenda item number 3, BZA 2019-00026. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to hear this case? We're going to hear agenda item number 2. We're on agenda item number 3. Okay, seeing none, we will take that item on consent.
We approve item number 2.
Second.
Okay, we'll have a motion by Mr. McKay, a second by
Item number 3, correct?
Item number 3, yes.
number 3. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 9-0. Let's go back to agenda item number 2, and it looks like we have Kathy up to present. Thank you, Kathy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a request by Riverside Christian Church, which is located a block south of West River Boulevard at the corner of Harrison and Litchfield. They are requesting a variance for a sign, an LED, a lighted sign to be placed on their property about in this location. There's a drive right there. And this is what the sign is going to look like. The sign is actually 32 feet, 32 square feet. And they're asking for a variance because the sign code allows only 25 feet. It does sit within, here's a sign location site map. It is located within a proper location on the property. This is looking east across the street from the driveway to the church. This is where the sign will be installed. You can see looking north that's the big 4-story condo there that faces the Little Arkansas River. This is looking a little bit northeast, and you can see the residential on the south side of the street. Oops, sorry. Again, looking southeast from the site, looking south in front of the church. Harrison Street is about 230 feet south of the sign location. And there again, that's just another, oops. So, planning staff is recommending with conditions that have, they're listed in your staff report, to allow the 34 square feet sign as per the elevation drawings, that the applicant has to get all necessary permits to construct the sign, and that it would be erected within 1 year. The graphics copy would be static images only and could only change once every 5 seconds, not less than every 5 seconds. One of the other things is that it has to be turned off between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And other than that, it has to comply with all other requirements of the sign code. So this is not an unusual request from neighborhood churches, so staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the variance request.
Thank you, Kathy. Questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, I would ask that agent or applicant please step forward. We have agent or an applicant here. If you'll step forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes to present on this case.
Which,
I don't know that I have anything else to say.
okay.
My name is Pat Bunton. I live at 4708 Baja Street. I'm the chairperson of the board at Riverside Christian Church. And I don't think I have a lot else to say other than what's been presented. We have been wishing for a sign for years. I mean, it's been years and years and years that we've been wishing for a sign. And so we finally got to the point where we thought we could afford one, and we had someone who had the capability of following up with that as far as drawings and all that kind of thing. And so that's what we did. So I can try to answer any questions if there is any, but.
Question, Mr. Richardson.
Good afternoon. Are you really set on the hours of operation here? Would you be willing to reduce the cutoff time in the evening to something earlier than 10 o'clock?
Such as,
Say 8 o'clock?
I guess that would be okay. Yeah, it's,
Okay, all right.
you know,
Thank you.
I think maybe it would, maybe, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the time that it actually gets dark. Varies throughout the year, so,
It does. I'm just thinking about when the neighbors, if you have to work an early shift and you might go to bed early, that sort of thing. If you have some flexibility there, maybe that subject will come up. So, thank you.
Other questions from the commission? Mr. Foster.
Is the size of the sign in its design being driven by the LED component?
no.
Did they attempt designs at the smaller square footage?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Did they show you any alternatives at the smaller square footage?
I can tell you what happened in this situation if you'd like to know the whole background on this sign.
Don't need all the background, just want to understand the
Well,
scale
the
of
sign
it.
has already been purchased, and we didn't realize that it was an honest mistake. The sign we were going to have within code, other than we didn't realize we had to have a variance for the LED part at the time that we came down here to find out about codes. The company that we purchased the sign from is in Florida, and we were going to get the sign that was the code sign size. When we talked to that person, they said, hey, we're having a special, and we will give you a 4x8 sign for the same price as the one that you initially wanted to purchase. And, without really reconsidering codes, we said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. So the sign got made already. I mean, the sign is in Wichita already. It's been here since the middle of May, ready to be installed. And then, we found out that we had to do the variance after our installer came to get a permit. So that's how this whole thing has happened.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? You'll step forward and state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
No, this is fine. My name is Kay Johnson. My address is 937 North Litchfield, and I live in this house. Well, I just messed up. Wait a minute. Oh, there it is. I live in this house right here. So I spend a lot of time gardening in my house, and I'm going to get emotional here because I really don't want this sign. I didn't hear anything about it till I got this variance letter. And I don't think it goes with our historic neighborhood at all. I have a 1923 house, and I've spent a lot of time fixing it up. I spent a long time looking for a particular house in Riverside because I thought the people around it, the houses around my house, would have a lot to do with the home I wanted, the neighbors I wanted, if they upkept their homes so that my property values would stay up. I think that this is going to be very irritating to me, and I think it's going to be detrimental to my property values. I think it's poor planning on their part that they bought this sign without really understanding everything, and that's not really my concern. I'm sorry, but they can probably, I don't know what, they need to eat it or something, but I'm not really interested in that. I did send in a letter, and I think that there are other issues that this church could be working on besides a big giant sign with LED. I really don't want the LED. I think that the LED is really out of character, and I think that this sign would actually be in a better spot clear on the north end of where they could put it, like down here, because then you might actually be able to see it from River Boulevard. Where it's at right now, you can't see it. I mean, even if they put a big sign, you're not going to really see it from River Boulevard. It's going to be showing all the people who already live there. Nobody's going to come in just because they have a little LED message on there. You know, the people that already live there know the church is there. So I don't think that the sign is the problem. I think the church needs to do invitations. I think the church needs to do direct mail. I think there's a lot of things they can do with communication among the church members and with other people besides the sign. I think that's a big spend of money. I had a business in California. I went from 1 employee to 12. I'm a retired veterinarian. I've done a lot of marketing. And then, so I know what I'm speaking about. It's unfortunate, the location, but I don't think that the location of the sign is going to help much because it's not really where you need to show it. You need to show it to people clear up on River Boulevard. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm just really unhappy with this. And it's going to be in language that the church people might understand, a thorn in my paw. So that's all I can tell you. So I appreciate the chance to speak out and let you know that I'm really unhappy with it. Thank you.
Ma'am, can you stay at the podium just a second so I can make sure there's no questions from the commissioners? Any questions from the commission? Thank you. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? If you'll, is this gentleman stepping forward? If you'll state your name and address, please, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hope my clock is accurate. Here we go. All right, David Donnell, what's that? Oh, I can look up there at that one. Or the buzzer will go off, right?
That's right.
Okay, I live around the corner from K, 932 North Porter Avenue. So I'm not directly in the line of sight. I too was caught off guard. I had no clue whatsoever that the zoning did allow this type of sign, which really kind of discourages me, that zoning to begin with. I know that the presenter said that these type of signs are allowed in neighborhoods. This is a historic neighborhood with character. Among the houses in here is, I believe, the oldest house in Wichita. So we take a great deal of pride in the character of our neighborhood. I had not seen the picture of the sign until I just looked at it right now. It's pretty, well, it's big. I'll say that. I guess it's legally allowed in there. The LED component does discourage me. I get the church. I want to be good neighbors. I get that they want to get the word out about their church. Monument sign would be great, but they've already purchased this sign, which also caught me by surprise. Their sign currently, Riverside Christian Church, it's kind of tucked in, and it is hard to see. So I do see their point in wanting a sign and wanting to get it. On the other hand, there is not a lot of traffic, outside traffic that goes down. That's mostly neighborhood traffic. I've walked my dog up and down that block for 30 years now, as long as I've lived in that neighborhood. You don't see a whole lot of outside traffic. So if they're trying to get new people, it's kind of the wrong location. You'd be a lot better up on North River Boulevard, which has a tremendous amount of traffic. But that's something for the church to decide. In the minute or so that I do have left, the LED can be really bright, and I don't know anything about how the measure of the LED. I've seen signs in other communities that are super bright. This one doesn't look particularly bright, but it almost can be blinding. I mean, you come around the curve, if it's really bright, and 8 p.m., it's already dark on a winter's night, and you're going like, whoa, my gosh. So if there's some way to maybe measure the LED or make sure that it's not so bright that it could blind drivers coming around that bend to come down Litchfield. The other point too is, they say, well, deter crime. I don't know if that's quite an issue there. I always feel safe in that area. So anyway, kind of torn on it. I know what Kay's coming from. I don't really like the concept. I know that legally they can put up something. The size of this really does bother me. And the LED aspect, I think we got to be careful about that. You put LED in a historic neighborhood, I know it's up to date and everything, but
Sir, your time is up.
okay, it kind of throws the atmosphere and it throws off the character of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Questions from the commission? Thank you very much. You will have an opportunity when we're done taking public comment for a 2-minute rebuttal. Somebody else would like to get up and speak on this case? If you'll step to the podium and state your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
I live next to Kay, and I don't know if I can figure this out or not. But
Ma'am, I need
Anyway.
you to state your name and address.
oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Gwen
Chancellor, for
Heckathorn, 939 Litchfield. For expediency, I'm going to read the letter that I wrote. No objections. Okay. My name is Gwendolyn Heckathorn. I own, fully paid for, and taxes current, the above property on Litchfield where I reside, and that's 939 Litchfield. I am an 18-year member of Riverside Christian Church, 1001 North Litchfield, one property away from my home. There's been a shift of focus at the church which has caused many, let me start again. There's been a shift in focus at the church which has caused considerable controversy and very likely upcoming loss of membership and finance. I have no particular disagreement with the political issues, but do have an adamant opinion against the related proposed installation of an LED sign in front of the church. The decision to plan, pay for, and erect this large LED advertisement, to my knowledge, was not voted on by the larger congregation, only maybe by the board. Maybe there was a vote. I believe this large LED addition would be a blight to an otherwise beautiful, welcoming, peaceful-looking church loved by the parishioners and the neighborhood alike. I also feel it could reflect on my property and on my street in this historic area, and could affect property values and sellability thereof. In past times, family, friendships, and word of mouth brought a generous number of people to the church. A huge LED edifice was not needed. The decision to plant this sign at the church was not a congregational or neighborhood action. I will be much saddened and disappointed to see its installation.
Thank you. Questions from the commission? Thank you very much. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, seeing none, I would ask, yes, do we have somebody that, okay, if you'll just step forward. If you'll state your name and address, please, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Mary Lou Schutte, and I live at 2833 North Tea Time Court. And I've gone to this church for a long, long time. And Pat did mention that we have wanted a sign for a long time. But a couple of the things I would like to address is that I don't know that we necessarily bought this sign or wanted this sign just to bring in other members. I think it was to let people in the neighborhood know about things going on at our church. We do a lot of things that we think are good for the neighborhood. We let Riverside School have their Thanksgiving meal in our fellowship hall. We used to have block parties. We have gone over and cleaned up the school landscaping grounds. We helped at the pancake feast that Riverside holds the last 3 or 4 years. It's not just to advertise that people come to the church, it's to let you all know what we're doing. And, you know, we do know we made a mistake in our purchase. If we could do it over, we would. But I don't know how we can. You don't just take back a sign. And so, you know, I'd just like you to consider that I realize that it might be upsetting to some of the people, but we are willing to turn the lights down. We're willing to make sure they don't hurt anyone at night. We're turning it so we thought perpendicular to the street so it didn't shine in the windows of the people across the street. We tried to be good neighbors, and don't crucify us for this one mistake. Thank you.
Questions from the commission?
Oh, yeah, questions for me? I'm short.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? If you'll step forward, state your name and address, please, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm the Reverend Arthur Stewart. I'm the lead pastor at Riverside Christian Church. My home address is 1323 North Emporia. I don't know if it's street or avenue. Whatever I pick is the incorrect one. I would just like to reaffirm what Mary Lou has said, and also Pat. Our efforts with the sign are not to alienate nor harm our neighbors. Part of the heart of this church is to help them. We're willing to be flexible, we're willing to be listening, we're willing to be understanding. And Kay, I have an orchid clipping that I'd like to bring by, and I'd like to talk to you more about this to see, as things go on, how we can find this out. I'll also be dropping off magnets, because I'm just that cheesy, with my phone number on it, so we can talk about this as well. Part of the heart of what we're doing at Riverside is making sure that our neighborhood and our people and our congregation are heard and are cared for. even when we seem to be taking very large steps that may or may not be 35 feet high. Thank you.
Questions from the commissioner? Mr. McKay?
Sir, earlier, the question was asked about the hours on the sign.
Yes.
Do you, on this layout you gave us, is that set in stone, where that location is going to be?
I believe it's set in concrete, yes.
No, I'm saying to you, can it be moved?
I've never moved concrete. I'm sorry, no, I don't know if it can be moved. I'll stop being a smart aleck, sir.
Location of the sign be moved?
I do not know, but I would assume it is possible. Oh, yes, I can't give a confirmation or denial of that.
Other questions from the commission? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else on the audience that would like to speak on this case? If you'll state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Kathy Rickstatter. I live at 4708 Baja. I'm a member of the church. The sign itself will dim automatically with it has it reads the lighting levels. It's a wireless sign. Originally, I had drawn it up at 3 foot or 4 foot by 6 foot, and I didn't, when I okayed the 4 foot by 8 foot, it didn't even dawn on me that it was a different size. And that would have been within the requirement in that area. So the software will actually take care of dimming it down. It can control whether it's flashing or if it's staying on for 5 seconds or 7 seconds or 10 seconds. Mainly it's just to give them information of the time, the date, the temperature, what programs are going on at the church, and activities that we're opening up to do with other people.
But,
Yeah.
Mr. Florence?
Do you have a maintenance agreement?
Mr. Florence? I need you to
sorry.
speak at the mic, please.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you have a maintenance agreement with anybody to take care of that sign? Because those things will malfunction.
The wireless part, it is under warranty, a lifetime warranty. It's a command sign program that's used in a lot of, it's very commonly used. It's very easy to handle. Anyone can work with it with a wireless system on your phone or your computer at home, but it has to have the password to get into it to change it. And also, the sign is in about 6 foot deep concrete so that it will withstand 120 mile an hour winds here. So that pad is fairly permanent. Answering that question. Any other questions?
Other questions from the commission?
I know you're pretty well invested in the sign already, but for that location, if that's the compromise, like how much hardship, considering what your neighbors feel, to put more lot instead of keeping it where it's at right now?
It'd be about $4,000.
$1,000 compromise, yeah.
And then we'd have to have a booster because the wireless only works within 150 feet. And we have
But
wireless
what,
on the
as far as
corner.
traffic goes and who you're trying to hit, what kind of a effect on your viewing crowd do you think that'll change, being that close to the church versus on the north end of your property?
You're asking if we moved it further north? There are a lot of trees there, and I didn't want to have people on Riverview Boulevard being flashed by it and drawing their attention, so we put it closer to the church. Is that?
Than you are on Litchfield, as far as how they're affected by the sign?
Well, they're going to see it directly. It's not like they're seeing it out of the corner of their eye as they're passing a street, then you're looking a half block down or more. It is a large parking lot that's open there up to the apartment complex, and we have a playground at the end of that.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Oh, okay. We will have the agent or applicant step back up, and you'll have a 2-minute rebuttal.
Basically, I'd like to just reiterate some issues that have been brought up. First of all, Kathy just mentioned that the wireless would not work if we moved it further north unless we did get a booster. I know about boosters, but not that much. The second thing is the sign is not taller than our church. The front of our church, where the doors are, is a flat roof, where the doors are in front, and the sign will not be taller than that flat roof that is the entranceway to our building. So I don't envision it being a humongous sort of look, because it's going to fit in with the size of the church. The other thing about location is that, Riverside has always thought of itself as being a neighborhood church. And we want to continue to be a neighborhood church. We are not trying, although we have members from all over Wichita, we are not trying to get members necessarily from people who go down the River Boulevard. We are trying to serve our neighborhood, be a neighborhood church. I can see that we could put up on the marquee that, the Riverside Pancake Feed, the Riverside Association Chili Feed. We can put things up there that have to do with our neighborhood, not just with what we are doing as a church. Although people at the church, we want to work with people in the neighborhood and be a neighborhood church. So that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to advertise and draw people necessarily off of the River Boulevard. That's not what we're trying to do.
Any questions from the commission? Thank you. And I will bring this back to the commission for action. Mr. Warren.
I got a quick question. What is the measurement for the brightness? There are, part of the sign ordinance limits that, and what is the?
I'm going to let J.R. Cox answer that. It's measured in nits.
It's
J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Area Planning Department. For the record, it's measured in nits, which is, I think, a non-SI unit of measurement.
And that is, this sign would have to stay below a certain level to meet the code?
At nighttime, it would, below 3,000 nits. During the daytime, without any other limitation placed on it, it could be as bright as they wanted it. When they make it as bright as they want it, if they choose to do that, they're going to reduce the life of the sign. But they could.
Signage is important. Thank you. I appreciate it. Signage is important, and so I think that what we're dealing with here is an error in 12 inches. Sign's going to be that much bigger than what it was originally planned to be. If we moved the sign, we'd just make a different set of people upset. It's, if you moved it to the south, that would upset some people. That's not really the issue to my mind. I agree with Mr. Richardson. I think that 10 o'clock is too late. I would move that we approve the request, but limit the hours to shut off at 9 p.m. And with that, that would be my motion to approve with that limitation.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Warren. I have a second by Mr. Green. Other discussion?
Clarification on time. You just put the PM, how about the AM?
Stay the same?
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Was 8 p.m. chosen as an arbitrary suggestion, or is that like a hard suggestion? I mean, is it? Yeah, is it like could it be based on sunset times and change throughout?
I would be opposed to that just because of the difficulty of it
Regulating.
changing. Just straight time. Close up, turns off at 9 p.m., can turn back on at 7 a.m.
Other discussion? Mr. Blick?
For the public's information, it's all based on a complaint basis, is that correct? So if they feel that it's so bright in the evening, they can call the department, they can come out and monitor the nits and all that stuff and see if it's within tolerance. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's
Okay.
complaint driven.
Sounds great, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 11-0. Just was not sure whether we still had 11 people coming in and out. Okay, with that, We will adjourn the BZA and we will recess the MAPC meeting. Open, I'm sorry. My mind's already in Alaska, I guess. I don't know what to say. All right, well, we have, on agenda item number 1, we have no minutes to approve, so we'll move right on to agenda item number 2, consideration of subdivision committee recommendations. Item number 2-1, sub 2019-00009, one-step final plat for the Ballpark Village addition. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anybody on the audience that would like to hear this case?
I want to hear Bob talk.
Yes, we will hear this case. Oops. Agenda item number 222, sub 2019-00028, one-step final plat for Estancia, second edition. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Yes, Mr. Foster?
No, I'm going to, well, I have a question for actually Mr. Green. I was at the meeting and I understood we were only approving for one. And this comes up as two, but what is your recollection of that?
It was to have two openings,
Okay, sorry,
two emergency openings, yes.
but I don't need to hear it.
You don't need to hear it. Okay, is there anybody from the audience that would like to hear this case? We will hear this case. Moving on to agenda item number 331, VAC 2019-00015, city vacation of sewer easement to accommodate new building plans on property generally located at 8th mile south of East 47th Street South and a 4th mile east of South Hydraulic. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, we'll take this item on consent. Item number 32, VAC 2019-00017, city vacation of drainage, utility, and access control easements on property zoned LC. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to hear this case? We will take that item on consent.
Move to approve items 3-1 and 3-2.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Warren to approve, a second by Mr. McKay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 12-0. Moving on to agenda item number 441, DER 2017-00003. Pursuant to KSA 12-747, adoption of the Delano Neighborhood Plan. Oh, we've got to hear that case, so we'll go ahead and hear that. How about that? Item number 42, PUD 2019-00004. That's for the city PUD for Ballpark Village on property currently zoned LC, limited commercial. Is there anybody on the commission who'd like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience who would like to hear this case? Seeing none, we'll take that item on consent. Agenda item number 43. Uh-oh. Okay, we will hear that case. All right, item number 43, CON 2019-00023 and ZON 2019-00019, county conditional use for vehicle storage yard in RR. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, we'll take that item on consent. Agenda item number 44, CON 2019-00024, county conditional use for accessory apartment in rural residential. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, we'll take that item on consent. Agenda item number 45, CUP 2019-00020 and ZON 2019-00026, city amendment to CUP DP 337 to remove an unplatted portion from the CUP associated with the zone change from LC to SF5. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Dave?
I'll need to abstain from that item.
You'll need to abstain, okay. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to hear this case? We'll take that item on consent. Agenda item number 46, PUD 2019-00008, City PUD Amendment to Revolution PUD 53 to expand the existing development onto adjacent property to the west and southwest and amend permitted uses and signage. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? We will hear this case. Agenda item number 47, ZON 2019-00021, city zone change from single-family residential to TF3 on property located on West Second Street North, west of Northwest Street. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to hear this case? All right, we will take that item on consent. Agenda item number 48, ZON 2019-00023, city zone change from limited commercial to general commercial. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? I got ahead of myself. We'll hear this case. Agenda item number 49, ZON 2019-00024, city zone change from TF3 to, oh, that one was withdrawn. I see it says withdrawn, so we will not hear that case either.
Move to approve items 4.3, 4.4, 4.7. 4.5 will be a separate one because of abstention.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Warren, a second by Mr. Bill Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 12. What? Motion carries 12-0.
Move to approve 4.5. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Warren to approve 4-5, second by Mr. Bill Johnson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 10-0-0. Did I get that? 10-0-1. 10-0-1. All right, and now we will go back to item number 3-1 and
3-1 or 2-1?
2-1, sorry.
Neil Straw, planning staff. Item 2-1, Ballpark Village Edition. This encompasses 6 lots. The zoning is LC and GC. They will be proposing a zone change to PUD that will be discussed later today. Plan unit development. The plat contains 6 lots in addition to an east-west street named Texas right here. At the subdivision committee meeting, there really was only one outstanding issue, and that was in regards to the church property. The Metropolitan Baptist Church is this property right here, abutting the north side of Texas, and they're involved in a land swap with the city of Wichita. And as of yesterday, I received a revised plat right here. And this adjusted the alignment of McLean and Texas in accordance with that land swap between the church and the city. Any questions for staff?
Questions from the commission. Mr. Green.
Can you describe what that land swap, how that changed in size and?
Sure, you can see right here, at McLean at Douglas narrowed somewhat due to that, the strip of land right here that went to the church. That's through a vacation case. That will be added to the replat of the church property in the future. And then along Texas, there was there was some right-of-way the church dedicated to the city. Again, it was adjusted since we saw the plat at the last subdivision meeting.
Other questions from the commission? Thank you. Okay, agent or applicant, if you could please step forward, and you will have 10 minutes. State your name and address, please. Almost forgot.
Good afternoon, Rebecca Melius, PEC 303 South Topeka, agent for the applicant being the city of Wichita. I might clarify, at the subdivision meeting, the discussion that had been had, the Texas Street right-of-way was all, that has not been modified. That was the only intent at that time, was to include that portion necessary to make Texas a public road. As those discussions have continued, we've been given the direction to go ahead and do this all at once, to include the total encumbrance of that land swap, which is to narrow McLean right-of-way to dedicate that area of land. The thin line you see here, it does have a small bulb out from a previous land swap with the church property and the city, but that thin line on the west is the old area of land. I would also advise there is an existing city storm sewer that runs through that strip of land, so a 20-foot utility easement will be retained to protect that storm sewer. Other than that, we are open to stand for any questions.
Questions from the commission? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? If so, step forward, state your name and address, please, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi there, I'm Stan Sheldon from Sheldon Architecture, 800 East First Street, Suite 140, representing Metropolitan Baptist Church. The direction that the city's taken as far as the way the plat is kind of drawn at this point is not so much of the issue here right now. We're concerned, or the church is concerned, that there's not a clear or understood plan for how all this is going to work together. And until that's more complete and we have a better understanding of how all these properties are going to join together and flow together and work together, the church wants there to be an understanding that they're not ready to sign this plat. Just simple. They want to see a more comprehensive plan. They're seeing parts and pieces as it goes through. They instead of kind of a parts and pieces sort of method, they want to see everything put together. Plans with Delano, plans with the ballpark, plans with the whole thing all together. And it's been parts and pieces, and that has made them very uncomfortable about what's going to happen when the ballpark opens and people need parking and so on and so forth. I hope that makes sense. Again, they're excited about the ballpark, glad it's happening. They are working with the city, but we just want to see a more complete and overall plan together before we would be ready to sign the plat. They just want to make sure that's real clear with everybody.
Green.
Yeah, what elements are you looking for to be able to have a complete picture of what's going to happen there at the ballpark and in that area?
I think it's probably hard to tell you exactly what all, but we know that there's the Delano plan, there's the PUD, there's other things that are in play, and we're getting some of these just a few days ago, or even just yesterday. We got the replat or the redefined plat, which we had not have a chance to really review carefully. We got that same time that your staff got that late yesterday afternoon. So we just want to see all this come together, all these different parts and pieces before we say, hey, we're ready to sign off on the plat. I don't have a specific list of every piece that we're trying to get understood.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, if not, we would ask agent or applicant to please step forward for a rebuttal, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I don't know that there's a whole lot to be added. Again, from my understanding, the discussions had been had, exhibits had been drawn previous to the resubmittal to planning, so I would hope that those were distributed appropriately, but it's a delicate balance of those discussions. So we're ready to continue working with the best we can. I would almost leave it as we left after subdivision, that this body would approve it as it is currently configured, and that the city council action be what's held until those negotiations are finalized, would be our hope.
Questions? Mr. McKay?
Well, I wonder if Scott Rabier or Bob would like to have any comment at this point in time. Let Scott do it.
Bob Layton with the City of Wichita. I don't know that I have a lot to add. We have been in extensive negotiations with representatives of the church, have made a lot of progress. The reason we needed to continue to move forward with plating is that we need to get McLean and Texas constructed, and that's the biggest issue. And further delays in this plating process will just continue to push us back and put our backs up against the wall in terms of getting the necessary infrastructure. I frankly thought we had an agreement regarding the alignment of Texas and the alignment of McLean. Brought it forward today because the church had asked for additional land that we would be vacating along the north end of McLean. So we thought that we were doing something that was consistent with our agreements to this point. Don't disagree with Stan at all regarding what's going to happen on the church property in the final master planning. A lot of issues that still have to be resolved there. I don't understand how that has any bearing on this plat, however, and the land exchange. So those would be my comments.
Questions? Mr. McKay?
The only bearing is, does the church have to sign the plat?
If they own any part of it, then they would have to sign, yes.
So not the threat, but the promise that if they don't do it this way, we will not sign the plat, so it can't go forward.
Well, and certainly as has been suggested, the Planning Commission could approve it, but the final plat wouldn't be asked to be signed until the final negotiations are done, and it wouldn't go to council, obviously, without all the signatures.
Proceed with McLean and Texas revamping if it's not signed.
Yeah, McLean could.
McLean can.
Yeah.
I might answer that quickly. McLean currently is within city-owned right-of-way and property as it lays today and in the new configuration. The construction of Texas Street would be impacted by a delay in the dedication of right-of-way by the recording of this plat.
The reason I'm asking these questions is because the gentleman got up and spoke, said they will not sign the plat unless they get certain conditions approved before they sign the plat. Well, we can't go forward with the plat if they're part of the plat and won't sign it.
I guess what I would suggest is that if there are amicable negotiations going on and those negotiations continue positively, then by approving the plat today, you wouldn't necessarily have to bring it back and delay the approval, that much later, because it's obviously not going to go to the governing body until everybody signed it.
Mr. Bill Johnson?
And that's basically why the subdivision approved it, because we approved it, but it's not final till all parties sign it and it's approved by city council. So I don't see it being held up here today, so I'd make a motion to approve it.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Bill Johnson, second by Mr. Green. Other discussion? Mr. Richardson?
Staff question, does this start some sort of clock running that has to be completed within a certain period of time? This can...
Planning Commission plat approval is good for 3 years.
3 years. Okay, well, surely we can get it worked out in 3 years. All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 11-0. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 22.
Neil Straw, Planning Staff, agenda item 2.2 is the Estancia second edition. This is a residential plat. It's located north of 37th Street, northeast of Ridge Road. It's an extension of this plat right here, the 173 lot Estancia addition to the south. And you can see this plat has one entrance at this location and an emergency access over on the east side. This is the plat. It increases the number of lots funneling through that one entrance from 173 to 226 lots with no connecting street stubs to the north. This shows the north side of the plat, of the proposed plat. The plat is denoting Estancia Circle on the northwest side right here. Again, this is a cul-de-sac. It does not extend all the way to the north property line. And along the northeast side, we have Solano Court, also terminating within the plat. The subdivision regulations state the plats shall provide for the continuation of existing streets in the surrounding area. There is an existing paved street village circle located right here at the northwest. That's in the Estancia Commercial Edition. This adjoins Reserve D of the subject plat right here. Staff recommended that Estancia Circle, the cul-de-sac, be extended to the north to connect with the existing village circle. At the northeast portion, staff recommended an emergency access easement. At the subdivision committee, the applicant's agent agreed with the emergency access to the north at Solano, over here to at the northeast, but said he did not want to make the street connection at the northwest from Estancia Circle. City Fire explained they needed one emergency access to the north, and the emergency access at Solano satisfied the requirement of the fire code. The subdivision committee, after considerable discussion, required an emergency access to the north for both Estancia Circle at the northwest and Solano at the northeast. The applicant is appealing this condition. They informed me today they would like to be able to provide an emergency access easement at either Solano or Estancia at their discretion in coordination with Wichita Fire Department. Any questions for staff?
Questions from the commission? Mr. Richardson?
Neil, just to be clear, the subdivision committee approved it with an emergency access in both places, is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right. That was a compromise, so they didn't have to connect Estancia Street.
In lieu of a street extension, that's correct.
Thanks.
Other questions from the commission? I guess not, Neil. Thank you. Agent or applicant, if you could please step forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, Brian Lindeback, MKC Engineering, 411 North Webb Road, on behalf of the owner and applicant. All of that is correct, what Neil, and we're in agreement with staff comments with this exception. I think one thing that wasn't mentioned is that this plat was approved, the preliminary plat was approved in 2015. It had a very similar configuration to this. The only difference is that we had 8 more lots with this configuration as opposed to the previous configuration that was approved. So staff reminded us that, after 3 years, the preliminary plat is null and void, And so I just wanted to add that background. So one of the things, a reason I bring that to light is that it was discussed in 2015 connecting these properties to the north into this residential development. And one of the major reasons why we were opposed to that was for security purposes. And for keeping commercial property segregated from residential property. This is single-family residential, this is general commercial and limited commercial up there. And so it's very important to keep that separation so that people don't cut through the neighborhood to get down to 37th Street. We are in favor and are in agreement with the fire chief in providing a access point to the north. Our only concern is that it be determined by us and not by this body which direction it needs to be, if it needs to be here or here. We've have plans for this area up here to the north, and we need to see those plans come to fruition, and that would compromise some of the development activity. So with that, I'll stand for any questions, and I do have the owner and an applicant here as well, should you have any specific questions for him.
From the commission. Yes, Mr. Green.
I think one of the concerns that we had at the subdivision committee level was the access, having the access point on the east location there at Salerno Court. You have an emergency access that goes to a field as opposed to the west access point going to a paved street, which would allow for better public safety, not only for people that live in the subdivision, but also for personal property. When you consider 226 homes that funnel down into one general opening down on 29th Street, it limits the possibility and the availability of emergency vehicles being able to get in there. We compromised with an emergency access point there at the north, at both the east and west side, instead of having a full open access point there at Estancia Circle. Emergency access points only allow fire to come in to a subdivision because they're the only ones that have the keys that are necessary to have access to get into a subdivision. At this point, with just one location, granted there's an emergency exit on 29th Street to the east of the main opening, but then to have another emergency access there, access point at Estancia Circle makes the sense at this point because Village Circle is already paved. And like I said before, Salerno, the emergency access would go to a wheat field. Now, granted, it could be developed into commercial property, but if you're trying to keep the separation from commercial and residential, kind of is confused. It was confusing for us to differentiate the two, so that's why we had the motion that to have the emergency access at 2 points.
Questions from the commission. Mr. Richardson.
It's not a question, it's a comment that one of the problems we have is the subdivision regulations are silent on how many lots you can have on a single entrance. So we fall back on the fire code and we ask the fire department what their recommendations are. We often override those when we probably shouldn't, which I'm not sure what that means for the city. But in this case, we thought this was the right thing to do. I wish the subdivision regulations had some numbers in them that we could go by. They simply don't. So we're stuck with the fire code, and the fire code's pretty restrictive on these things. And again, we only have a single public access for this number of lots, which is why we went the direction we did.
I'd just add that we are in favor of having that emergency access easement per the fire chief's recommendation of having one single fire opening.
Bill Johnson.
Well, this isn't the first plat that had a future street that went to a field. I mean, there's a lot of them in the city of Wichita that never developed over 20, 30 years. So with the no regulations on the number of lots, and as long as the fire department was fine with one emergency access, that's the reason I did not vote for the motion, it's subdivision.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, and Mr. Johnson brings up a very valid point. We have had many subdivisions over the years where we have had access points. In this particular case, it's an emergency access point, but in other instances, we've had streets that have funneled off of a subdivision, and then the subdivision may never have been created to the north or southeast or west, whatever direction. And we've had situations where this subdivision did materialize that was adjacent to the approved subdivision, and we ignored and overrode the decision by the platting of that first plat. We have eliminated the need to have that subdivision connect to an adjacent subdivision. So, yeah, the regulations are sketchy and vague, I guess, at best, in some instances. And we need to be cognizant, I feel, of safety of the neighborhoods, access to large subdivisions that have limited access for emergency.
Mr. Richardson?
We do have a representative of the fire department here. I would like at some point to hear from him and clarify his recommendations.
Very good. You have a question? Did you have your hand up? Okay. All right, if no other questions for Mr. Lindebach, you want to listen to the fire marshal next? Okay.
James Scott Fromey, Wichita Fire.
Rebuttal.
Is it correct that you only want one opening to the north? I guess I did not understand that previously.
One access point would meet the minimum. One accessible access point would meet the minimum for the fire code for any development over 30 houses.
Okay, and do you have a preference on where that should be today?
I would prefer that it be accessible.
As soon as possible.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions, Mr. Green?
Yeah, could you differentiate what an emergency access point is with an open street access? What types of delays do you incur, or are there any delays incurred when you have a single point of access compared to, multiple points, and specifically emergency access points?
Well, for fire response, emergency access point has to be defeatable by either a Knox lock, having a Knox lock on it where we'd have a key to access the lock, or a chain that we can cut with bolt cutters. The other emergency response units like EMS and PD don't have that option. So as far as fire response to a location within the development, we're going to take the public way. And if it's a long distance to that route, there's going to be a delay in response to that particular area. We don't typically go to the emergency access as an option right away. We would do that if we didn't have access to the public way because of a incident there or other issues. So it is not our emergency accesses are not our first go-to, and it would be, there'd be a delay for us to actually identify that on our maps, because when we drive our streets, we don't use that emergency access. We familiarize ourselves with developments and so forth. That's our point of access, as it would be for anybody else in the public.
Okay, other questions from the commission? All right. Oh, Mr. Blick, you have a question?
Technology question. I know that inside your fire trucks, you guys have the screen of layouts of these areas. Do you also have the the layout of these emergency exits and entrances also?
For example, on the Solano court, we would see the court itself. I'm not positive that the emergency access would show up on that. I'd have to look into that, sir.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case?
I think I'd mentioned that we wanted to use the rest of our time there with Mr. Schellenberg to answer some questions and to share some of his input.
Scott, do you know how much time they had on the clock?
Well, it was a 2-minute rebuttal.
Well,
No, I reset it when you started asking him questions,
okay.
and I didn't look.
Give them 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion and by Mr. Warren and a second by Mr. Richardson to give you 2 additional minutes.
Thank you.
If you'll state your name and address, please. Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you for keeping me in line today. Okay, if you'll state your name and address, and you'll have 2 minutes. I'm losing control.
Marvin Schellenberg, and address is 3324 Ridge Road. And I'm the developer, president of Schellenberg Development Company. And Estancia is a development that has homes into 300 to 450,000. You know, we are totally fine to design things per code, but when we put these areas in, it's critical. If we have 3 areas, we always try to berm, especially being up against commercial areas. And we like to create that separation, a hard separation between our homeowners and the commercial. And when you add another entry into there, I can't do anything there. That has to be kept totally open, which disrupts what the neighborhood is all about. And so I don't want to have 2 entries in there when we already have, in total, if we include 1, we've got 3 entries into our development. And for me, you know, we put a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of thought into what we do. And it changes things with how the aesthetics of what the neighborhood's about. And so I would like to be able to keep that open, to make that flexible to how we finalize things up on the north end. Questions?
Commission.
So
Mr.
when,
Green.
can you identify your 3 access points?
Well, we have our main entry on 37th Street. We have another emergency entrance on 37th Street, and then our third one would be here, and you're asking for 4. And I might also point out the distance between here and here is about 30 seconds. I mean, it's very close.
Even after heavy rain in a field?
Excuse me?
They said even after heavy rain in a field, a wheat field? Is that paved north of Salerno Court at this point?
No.
Okay.
No. And I don't know, it'd be interesting to find out how many, in the past 10 years, how many emergency entrances have you gone through for emergencies? Do you know?
I wouldn't have the data for that, sir. It's rare that we do that.
Does that happen maybe 0 in the last 10 years?
I wouldn't be able to say that, sir.
Any other questions by the commission? Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay,
I've got a question,
yes.
staff question. Is it possible to put a time limitation on this that let them choose, but we have to have one within a certain period of time, within a year or something else? My concern is that, and I know Brian has said they have immediate plans to develop these things, but, you know, I can show you ones around town that they never got built. Can we say, as long as you have one built in 12 months, we're okay? Is that possible?
I don't see that that's possible through what you're considering right now. You actually already approved the zone change. You could have put it as a condition on that.
That should have been a condition of the zone change, is that,
You could have put it in the
I see.
amendment of the CUP.
that's passed?
I mean, it's the same meeting, so you could take
I
it back
see.
up and reconsider it.
Okay, all right, but not as part of the subdivision approval.
Correct.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, I'd like to at least try a motion here that we approve the plat with an emergency access point off of Estancia Circle and not Salerno. They said they were willing to do one, but they wanted to make the selection. But for my, and I think for the safety of the community and the area, that we need to make that the decision for them and make it, the emergency access point be there off of Estancia Circle.
Second that.
Okay, have a motion by Mr. Green. I have a second by Mr. Richardson. Other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
No.
No? Is that two?
Somebody second it?
Mr. Richardson.
Yeah, it was seconded. So motion carries 9, 2. Lost Mr. Foster. 8-2. Thank you. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 4.1. And it looks like we have Matt up. I wanted to see if we have Matt up to the bat.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Williams, Associate Planner. Today I'm bringing forward the Delano Plan for the public hearing. The 2019 Delano Neighborhood Plan is a community-wide vision for improvements and development in the Delano neighborhood. This policy document will act as a guide for planning improvements and evaluating development opportunities in Delano for the next 15 years. This is an update to the 2001 Delano Neighborhood Revitalization Plan and amendment to the Comprehensive Plan. The planning process was coordinated by the MAPD, and throughout the process, we kept this vision statement in mind. Delano is envisioned as a vibrant, historic, pedestrian-oriented urban district that offers diverse shopping, dining, entertainment, and residential opportunities to residents, visitors, students, and the broader community. This plan assesses the strengths and challenges of Delano while recommending policy and infrastructure projects that the neighborhood could use to achieve improved vibrancy. The plan has 11 land use recommendations, and they've been grouped into short, medium, and long term. And as I said, it's a plan for the next 15 years. The short-term recommendations in the Delano plan include the design of a ballpark village that adheres to the ballpark village master plan that I'll get to in a minute, the redesigning of McLean Boulevard between Maple and Douglas, the establishment of a vibrant river plaza on the river's edge, the redevelopment of a former rail corridor into a multi-use path north of Douglas, adopting a strategy of implementing identified parking improvements throughout the neighborhood, and adopting a future land use strategy. The midterm recommendations include extending the identifiable core Douglas streetscape west of Seneca, implementing neighborhood markers throughout the neighborhood that direct visitors to specific locations, improving housing conditions, and connecting the sports complex with the performing arts complex with a pedestrian bridge. There's also a long-term recommendation of activating a Hanley corridor to create a neighborhood connection north to the Keeper of the Plains. The plan also has an appendix that includes the Ballpark Village Master Plan. This master plan is intended to create a signature destination on Wichita's riverfront. Ballpark Village will benefit the city and region as an economic stimulus, inviting use of existing and new businesses and real estate development. It will celebrate and enhance the unique sense of place present along the Arkansas River and in the heart of Wichita. You can see the Ballpark Village master plan site outlined in red up here, with the orange being the public land and yellow being private land with redevelopment potential. The plan includes this concept image of how the site could be laid out. The different colors indicate different programming that could happen on the site, with yellow being the stadium, pink being retail and commercial, and blue being office and residential. The plan includes a parking plan that utilizes the many spaces available within the 5 to 10 minute walking distance. There's also potential for more parking to be built north, west, and then potentially south of the stadium. Visitors will be directed to parking available around the site, and there's a free queue trolley line that goes up and down Douglas, as well as ride share, bike share, and then potential scooters. The plan includes different design elements that help protect things in the area. For example, views. View corridors that were important were the Delano Clock Tower to the Delano entrance of the stadium, as well as McLean Boulevard to the river. So in order to protect those, certain buildings have height restrictions or site location restrictions to prevent or to preserve those views. And there are several guidelines based on screening and buffering, street lighting, bike parking, path connections, facades, and building materials throughout the village. On this slide, you can see the different, what are called in the plan as edges, the different way the buildings meet the public realm. So for example, along McLean Boulevard, that's identified as primary active edge, and that would have different guidelines than, for example, the stadium edge along Sycamore. Along McLean, there'd be more requirements for walkability, amenities, windows, things of that nature. So that's a quick overview of the plan. We've kept the Advanced Plans Committee up to date throughout this whole process, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
From the commission. Okay, looks like I have no questions, Matt. Thank you. Okay, agent or applicant?
This is just a public hearing.
This is just a public hearing, so is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on this case? If you'll step forward to the podium, state your name and address. That wasn't Bob, was it? Okay, that's good. Scott. I didn't mean it that way, Bob.
Bob's already had his time.
Scott Rigby, City of Wichita. Just a minor technical change we'd asked regarding McLean. Within the Ballpark Village Master Plan, which is a subset of the Delano Plan, I think it's page 15, it talks about McLean Boulevard and reconstruction. And towards the end of that, it talks about a recommendation to be a curbless street design. As we've gone through engineering design, Texas Street will be a curbless street with an inverted crown to allow the drainage to McLean. But however, McLean will need to be a curbed street in order to handle the drainage. So we request the curbless term be changed to a curb street.
Questions from the commission? You don't seem to have a lot of questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, if you'll step forward, state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Mert Buckley. I'm an attorney with the Adams Jones Law Firm here in Wichita at 1635 North Waterfront Parkway and representing Metropolitan Baptist Church. I just want to, on this issue, it's the same thing that Stan talked about. This affects the church property. And I thought, as I read it on the design standards, and we've had discussions on this, but it's my understanding this has not been resolved as far as what the church is comfortable with on what these restrictions are going to be placed on their property.
Questions
Yes,
from the commission?
I can't call on you, excuse me.
What is it you're not coming?
In particular, the design requirements for the buildings, and that's just one. And then the height of the buildings, they have an existing height on one of the buildings that might have some HVAC units on top that might conflict with the last draft I saw. So these have not been resolved to my knowledge. And that's a big issue. The church is planning to stay there in a smaller building, remodel it, refurbish it. But
want to have some discussions about what type of materials they have to have on their building.
Green? You have, no? Mr. Richardson?
It's a staff question in terms of the, which has precedence here, the neighborhood plan, or, I'm not sure what the, I can't remember what the zoning is where the church is. Mert, is it still single, what is it? Scott, do you remember?
I believe the church is zoned LC and GC. It was stated that this would establish restrictions, regulations. It does not do that. This is a plan that would establish policy that would guide future decisions about zoning on the baseball property, which you're going to consider as an item next, and the church property, which has not filed an application to build anything as of this point.
But as it would stand, let's just say this plan is approved, the church says, well, we're going to build something here that meets the zoning, but may not meet the spirit of the plan. The zoning's going to preside over this issue, I think.
That's correct. This does not change any of their existing zoning rights. So were they to file for a building permit for something that is permitted by their current zoning, then the existence of these guidelines in this plan would not have any effect at all.
Okay.
Were they to file a zone change, then what staff would do, like we do with all plans that get adopted, is we would look at the plan, compare it to the request for the zone change, and then make a recommendation accordingly.
So I get that. Does that make sense, Mert, that unless you come for a zone change, this essentially is not going to have ability to change your plans?
When we, in our prior discussions with the city, I don't recall that was raised. Our prior discussions were that we were going to meet and work out these questions about the design standards for the church and the rest of the area. And so this is kind of catch me by surprise day. I was really here for the other issue and decided just to stay and hear this. So I thought these items were being addressed, and I realized they haven't been.
Answer the question that we did meet with church representatives, and this is the first I've heard they're not satisfied with this. So,
Other questions from the commission? Mr. Green?
So what again are the design concerns that you have with the construction of whatever you're planning to do on your property that might prohibit you from being able to build and the kind of facility that you're wanting to build? I hear that, comments about, well, we're concerned about this or that, but there's been nothing specific what those concerns are. I mean, are you worried about the height of the structure? Are you worried about the design of the structure, how it the appearance of the structure, so that it ties in with the other buildings in the area?
It's catching me a little cold on this because I looked at this about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we met. And Stan Sheldon could answer this much better than I could as the architect. But as I recall, the height of the buildings I mentioned, there were height restrictions because I recall they wanted a view from home plate out to Douglas Street and the river. They didn't want the buildings to block it. And we have existing buildings that were taller than that with the HVAC on top of it, as I recall. Secondly, in the original plan, the last plan I saw, there was a requirement for glass facing on the buildings, on the street, on facing McLean. I don't think the church was open to that, or at least they wanted to have some discussions before they were required to do that. Those are the main ones, I think. If you allow Stan to speak, he may have some others.
Okay, because I know that there's glass facing on the church currently on McLean Boulevard, on the south half of the building. So I'm confused about what the issues are. that are
Again,
preventing
Stan
you from wanting
Sheldon,
to do anything
800 East First Street. I think the issue has to do more with, again, it probably comes back, a lot of it would come to how does this impact parking, cross-lot circulation, all those sorts of things. I think it also does impact us some on these, the skin that they're expecting on some of these pieces. Let me tell you, city staff's been great. We're working with them. There's a lot of discussions that are taking place that we're trying to understand what all these different issues are. We just feel like there's, from the church's viewpoint, we're getting this piece, then we're getting this piece, and it doesn't feel like we can get our hands around the whole thing all at the same time. And I understand everybody's got a lot of pressure. They're trying to get things moving. By the way, there's a ballpark being built. I mean, it's not a small thing here. So I appreciate what the city's trying to do and keep things moving. But from the church's viewpoint, we're seeing too many small pieces of the whole thing and don't feel like we're getting a good understanding of how it's all going to work together. It's a fairly complicated project, as you can tell. So that's our concern, and that we want to understand all of it together. And again, we're just seeing parts and pieces. To dissect parts of this, some of these things, Scott, we have met with Scott Rigby and with others, and with Scott Knable and the manager and so forth, to try to understand parts and pieces. They did respond with some of those things in the plan. They did change. But again, we're getting small pieces of it, and not being able to sit down with all these new components, the plat, the plan, and see them all together and make sure we're all on the same page. That's all that's our primary complaint, is that we're seeing parts and pieces.
A preference list to present to them, or is just yes or no based on what they propose to you?
Don't know how to answer that exactly, except that we are in discussions with them on a variety of different issues. I don't have a list in front of me right now to say.
Are they
this-
aware of what you don't agree with or do agree with, or Scott?
Yes,
This Scott or that Scott, either
yeah,
one.
we've had some conversations with them. The piece that Mert brought up about the view from home plate, that was in a previous draft of the plan. That's not in the plan that you're considering today. That's been removed. The issue with the glass facing, there's multiple options with how that could work. Absent seeing a specific plan for either a building that was permitted by the existing zoning, or a zone change application that we could react to, that they had, certain issues with what these policies are. As I know this commission is aware, we're willing to work with people on things, and if there is a planned policy that really proves not to be workable, we as staff note that, and include that in our recommendation on a routine basis. I think you have to come to one of these meetings, and you can see that staff is recommending that we not follow our policy at every meeting for one reason or another, because we have more information than we did when we did the plan.
That's the reason I'm asking the questions, because they keep saying we give you a piecemeal. And being involved in this to start, I can understand also the fact that I can't quite understand why all these times, this is not something that just happened overnight.
That's correct.
You've been working on this thing for a long period of time. And at this point in time, I have a problem with the fact earlier in the other issue, we're not going to sign the this happens and that happens and this happens, but we don't know what this and that is. That's where I'm coming from.
Other questions from the commission?
I've got one.
Mr. Richardson.
So Stan, let's just say you came, are you worried about this plan overriding something else when you come to get a building permit? Should you never come to agreement on this?
That's a great question. I probably would say, when, as an architect, when we see a plan, we really do come with the intention of honoring what people have tried to lay down as an idea and a guideline on, this is the way we want to see this project move forward, this total development. But seeing that, it's not hard and fast, this is what has to happen. It's a guideline, and being the clarity of the stipulation being where this is a direction, but we're not absolutely making these things requirements. We'll work with you to figure this out. That's a little different understanding than maybe I would have if I had come up here to say, when you put this plan down, this is what has to happen, it's the law. I think Scott said it a little differently than that these are guidelines. And so under our current zoning, we're allowed to do more than what the plan suggests we could. So there's probably room for compromise and figure this out. But again, those are things that are still up in the air from our viewpoint, and it makes us a little bit uncomfortable.
But if you came for a building permit, I'm guessing that when you get a permit, they probably don't look at the master plan. They look at whether or not it meets code and the zoning ordinance. Am I right, Scott?
That's correct.
The attorney's shaking his
comment
head.
I might make is
Yeah.
that were they to file a building permit under their current zoning, what they'd be allowed to do is significantly less than what they could do through a rezoning that was consistent with the guidelines of this plan. They would receive significantly greater development rights by rezoning and following the guidelines of this plan than what they could do with their current zoning.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission? Not yet. Not yet.
We haven't concluded the public hearing yet, so.
Yeah, we're still gonna have public hearings, so.
Done with me?
I think we're done with you for the moment. Thank you. So is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Bob?
President
ahead.
Delano.
If you'll state your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Vincent Hancock, Vice President, Delano Neighborhood Association, 406 South Vine. Want to backtrack before we go forward. This plan was the result of a group of 14 people that represented businesses, clergy, neighbors, both people within the neighborhood and people outside of the neighborhood. Specifically when it comes to the ballpark, while it may be on our soil, we know that it's everybody's playground. We wanted this to be a place that everybody felt comfortable with. As Scott mentioned earlier, this is an advisory plan. This is the neighbors' goals for what we'd love to see happen in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. This is not code. This is not binding in any way, shape, or form. It's intended as both advisory to planning staff and as advisory to our elected officials as they're considering how things grow in this neighborhood over the next 15 years. So I would say that the only things that affect the church plot are the fact that it's currently zoned LC, GC, and it does fit under the Delano overlay. There's nothing else in this plan, there's nothing in this plan specifically that tells them what they can or cannot do in the buildings. It's advisory of, we'd like things if they look this way, but there's nothing that's making a code recommendation that says it has to be done this way. And coming up in the next item that you'll be considering, you'll very clearly see that the PUD has been drawn completely around the property so that it doesn't affect them in any way. I'll stand for any questions.
From the commission. Okay, thank you. Now, since you didn't get to finish your 3 minutes, if you'll hop back up and we'll give you an additional 1 minute.
I just wanted to clarify a couple things. John, first of all, the church is not saying we want this, this, and this. They, and I apologize if I made it sound that way, they've been at that location over 50 or 60 years, since the mid-1960s. This is a big decision for them to sell that property and then rebuild there. So they want to know what's going to happen as best they can. I know you can't predict everything, so that's the first point. The second point is, as Stan said, we have been meeting with the city and have had progress in that direction, and that's been good. What I'm saying is, we, the church, would have liked to have had this further along before we see the master plan today. I understand it's advisory, but still, as we all know in meetings, when you say, well, you can take care of that next year when you come up and it satisfies the code, somebody's going to say, well, it doesn't meet the master plan. So if we can have discussions to maybe clarify some of these issues with the church, that might make us a little more comfortable. But we're working with the city. We appreciate their work on it. We just want a better picture of what it's going to look like when it's all done. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the commission? Mr. Green, did you have a question? No? No? Okay. Is there anybody else from the audience that wants to speak on this case? If not, I will bring it back to the commission for action. Well, let's see, Mr. Warren?
When you have one developer who's doing everything, it's possible to have some hard and fast rules. When you have a moving piece like this that has so many aspects to it, the guidelines need to be broader, and with the hope and the expectation that people play nice with each other and work together. What I've seen so far is that people want to work together. They're working hard at every level to work together, so I'm comfortable with that and with that. So I would move that we pass a resolution adopting the Delano Neighborhood Plan of 2019 as an amendment to the Wichita-Sedgwick County Comprehensive Plan.
I second it, and as far as the church, it looks like to me they can do whatever they want, whether anything was going on with the zoning they got. I'm sure that the city and staff and everybody would even work with maybe some variances and stuff if this goes through in the event they want to do something that don't quite meet what they got. So I feel very, very comfortable with the motion.
Your motion includes Scott Rigby's suggestion about.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You're in agreement with that, Mr. Bill Johnson? Okay, other discussion? Mr. Richardson?
I'm going to support this motion because we have other neighborhood plans, and when we get requests for changes, that's just one of the inputs that we look at is the neighborhood plan because it is advisory. And so I think we can move forward with this.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries 10-0. Thank you. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 4.2. It looks like we have Matt up again.
Okay, this is PUD 2019 4, zone change to PUD planned unit development to create Ballpark Village PUD number 61 and remove zoning from the river. The applicant is seeking to establish the Ballpark Village PUD on the 24-acre tract generally located on the northeast side of North Sycamore Street and West Maple Street. The applicant is also seeking to remove the DO Delano overlay over the 10-acre tract on the Arkansas River between Douglas and Waterman Street. This is to clean up the Delano overlay boundary, as this tract was never intended to be zoned Delano overlay. The applicant has indicated the intent is to construct a new multi-use sports complex and allow a mix of commercial uses on the property adjacent to the complex. In 2018, demolition of the Lawrence Dumont Stadium began in anticipation of a new AAA minor league baseball team franchise. The site is being developed through city partnership with the new team and will be guided by the Ballpark Village Master Plan, a component of the Delano Neighborhood Plan. The property is being platted as the Ballpark Village addition concurrently with this PUD. The property is currently zoned LC Limited Commercial, GC General Commercial, and DO Delano Overlay. The property contains the recently demolished baseball stadium, parking lots, a portion of McLean Avenue, and the west bank of the Arkansas River to the east of McLean. Staff recommends approval of this with a few conditions in your staff report. Here's an aerial view of the site. You can see this area above the river that's going to be taken out of the Delano overlay. And then to the west of this dotted line, the baseball stadium, McLean Boulevard, and the parking areas, that's what is going to be rezoned to this PUD. And I've got a few pictures of it here, but I'm sure we've all seen those, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission. Mr. McKay?
So the river is part of the PUD, correct?
No, that's, yeah, the river is just being taken out of the Delano overlay. The PUD is just going to cover the rest of the site.
Mr. Richardson?
And just to be clear, it does not include the church property. Is that
Correct.
right?
You can kind of see on this drawing right here, the church property is left out of it.
Okay.
Other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you, Matt. If we could have agent or applicant step forward, state your name and address. And you know you'll have 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon again, Rebecca Melius, PAC, 303 South Topeka. I just want to take the first opportunity just to thank you for hearing us. We're really excited to be a part of this partnership with the city of Wichita for cleaning up the area, getting the DO taken off of the river, and then seeing how the ballpark is going to really get to develop. So I would note that this PUD was developed based on the old configuration of the plat, which you approved earlier today. We will be making that revision for the PUD to appropriately reflect the McLean right-of-way before that gets finalized, and we'll address other staff action. So we are here, and obviously Bob and Scott are here to answer any specific questions, but we're looking forward to getting it moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the commission for Bob or Scott or anybody? No? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission for action. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McKay to approve, a second by Mr. Blick. Other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 10-0. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 4.6. And it looks like Dave, are you up?
Was he awake?
Dave, are you awake?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep, Dave.
I'm making notes of what you all have done here, so. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Dave, you're out with Principal Planner. This is a request to amend the existing PUD, number 53, for Revolucia, which is on, as you know, East Central, between Volusia and Estelle. The application is outlined in blue on the screen, and what they are doing is expanding to cover the entire length of Central between Estelle and Revolucia. And they're also picking up one lot that is on the east side of Estelle, south of the alley. You can see an aerial of the area in question outlined in red. The main thing is that they have acquired, the developer has acquired the property, including the funeral home on the east side of Estelle, which is at the west end of that block. They've also acquired the lot to the south of the alley, which is proposed to be used for parking. You can see here the overall plan and vision. This is the site plan that shows what's proposed for the new PUD. The bulk of the original development happened here on the east side of the property. You have Volusia on the far east, Central Avenue, obviously on the north side. They've acquired the property to the west and have actually placed additional and made conversions of storage complexes here on what's now identified as Parcel 2. Parcel 3 is the single lot south of the alley, and its primary use is intended to be for parking and a trash area on kind of on the east end of that property. Some photos, which I'm sure you're aware of. This is looking east along a Central. We're at Estelle, and you can see here's the funeral home. This is looking south on Estelle. The entrance to the alley is right here at my arrow, and it's the area south of this area that's proposed for the parking. That's looking north, and I'm actually in the alley looking north. Wow, that's very sensitive. That are Jim's doing this stuff, so. There's a picture looking west along Central. This is the site where you can see the new units that have been placed there on the west side of the existing development. And here I am on Estelle looking from the alley north towards Central. We have recommended approval. The amendments are covering the uses that were envisioned in the site plan that's shown here. Also picks up all the uses and activities that are occurring within the Revolution development. And we have a sign issue along this south side of the alley. Well, actually, north side of the alley as it faces to the south. We have TF3 zoning to the south that, under the zoning regulations, is not necessarily permitted, but this PUD will recognize and accommodate the sign that exists there. And with that, then I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from the commission. Mr. Green.
Yeah, Dave, did I read this correctly, that parcel 3 is they're requesting to have that not be paved?
Yes, their request is to allow that to be used for parking, but they want that to be gravel.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't pave it?
Well, the code would require paving, and I'll let the agent for the applicant discuss the rationale as to why.
Other questions from the commission? Mr. Florence.
You said that, they do have a problem with that sign on the south side of that building.
Yes, right
And-
here.
Yeah, and they're asking for that particular building to be governed by the CBD signing code, which will allow a roof-type sign. So, and which I think would be inappropriate for that spot. So,
Well, within the PUD, they've got they have, the ability to address how they wish to do that, and their request is to allow that, that as it's existing now, to be made conforming. That's what their request is.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying within the CBD, roof signs are allowed per the zoning code. So
Well,
that this person.
It's the sign code that controls that, yeah.
For the sign code. It was in the sign code, which that would be allowed, which if they may not want to do it, but somebody else come along behind them may want to do that. I would like to see some type of exclusion. For
Okay,
that fact.
that's within your preview, because they're asking to amend this, and it puts everything on the table.
Other questions from the commission? Seeing none? Thank you, Dave. If agent or applicant could please step forward. And of course, you need to state your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes.
Russ Avey, agent for the applicant with Boffman Company of 315 South Ellis. I'll answer Mr. Florence's question here quickly. We have no intention of a roof type mounted sign. If you recall, for those of us that were here a few years ago when we established this PUD, it was the developer's intent to primarily utilize building signs. And as we know, there's 2 stories worth of these containers. And you'll notice on the east and west, as you're driving down Central, that Revolution is fairly prominent on the upper story of the northernmost building. When we talk about permitting a sign here, you'll recall that a lot of utility and HVAC equipment is on the rear of the building along the alley. They put up panels that matched the materials of the development itself. And I'm not certain if it is a sign that says Revolution or if it is a logo, but nonetheless, it meets the requirement and definition of a sign. So the reason that we're asking for any type of signage back here is on that low panel, and it would be lower than 8 feet in height. So we would be more than happy to put a prohibition on any type of roof-mounted signage. And I'll make a note of that. Jumping back into a general discussion, there are a few things. As we know, PUDs can be somewhat complex, and there are a number of defined land uses in the code which need further clarification. So we are asking for a drinking establishment as an example, and we're asking for vehicle and equipment sales and display, which seem to be a pretty hard pill to swallow on its face. But just to clarify, the vehicle and equipment sales and display is only for promotional, a single car for promotional purposes. There is a German restaurant and now a German retail shop, market if you will, within the development. We've had certain German automakers wish to display a German-made car within this courtyard. And if you've had the good fortune of being out here, you'll notice that the interior courtyard is fairly well protected from outside view. So when we talk about drinking establishments, when we talk about common consumption areas, and when we talk about this vehicle display, it would all happen internal to the development, and quite frankly, wouldn't be able to be seen from any of the public right-of-ways. Parcel 2, this was developed. This property is currently zoned limited commercial. Unlike our proposed PUD, our original PUD here within Parcel 1, Parcel 2 allowed the development of these units in conjunction with Parcel 1 without any other type of zoning action needed. So Mr. Ramsey, the applicant, had owned what is Parcel 2 for quite some time, simply never needed to include it into the PUD until this point. When he acquired Parcel 3, he was envisioning that as ancillary parking for employees, as well as the location of recycling bins and trash bins, again with screening. And so once the applicant chose to include Parcel 3 within the development, we simply included Parcel 2 as well. One thing that this amendment will create as a comprehensive design is we will allow a little bit additional, better parking situation for the development than was originally required of us during the initial PUD approval. So that was one benefit. And the only thing else about the nightclub is the applicant has interest. Again, if you've been on site, you'll notice that there are a lot of niche shops, things of that nature. Likewise, he has area South Central Kansas wine vendors or wine makers that would like to set up a small tasting shop. So again, it would be glasses of wine, glasses of hard cider, things of that nature for sale, which would require a drinking establishment land use. With that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Green?
Yeah, Russ, could you justify for us the reason why we should not require Parcel 3 to be paved?
So with Parcel 3, can I justify it? I'm not sure I'm on my A game today. So we have, I will say this in general terms, not necessarily specific to this as a reason to hang my hat on this particular property, but in general terms, we have seen kind of an evolution of all parking surfaces requiring asphalt, asphaltic cement, or concrete as a paving surface be modified slightly for large area parking, tractor trailer, transportation depot situations, Groendyke hauling, So a lot of the tractor trailer parking, large scale storage unit, when we did Red Box down south, all those different, we were able to make the argument, and I think successfully so, and rightfully so, that when we talk about stormwater, not only quality but quantities, a slightly impervious surface does a better job handling both of those. That's a great salient argument for large-scale parking fields. We've also done it for certain event centers. Here, this is a little bit smaller. Clearly, the impact one way or the other isn't all that great. The architect for this particular project, the principal of which just left here about 30 minutes ago, they had done a similar project or saw a similar project in San Antonio where they used crushed gravel. And one of the issues we all know with crushed gravel parking lots is it can't be striped, so you can't account for, is there 6 parking spaces here or are there 8 parking spaces here? It's undefinable. Their design would include stop blocks, parking blocks, inverted along perpendicular to the south line to create parking spaces with the crushed gravel compacted amongst them. So we felt that was an interesting design, a progressive design perhaps from a stormwater standpoint, and we would like the opportunity to do that here at this location. Understanding that perhaps in the future, there may be a redevelopment, an additional unit, a single-story unit placed on this Parcel 3.
Yeah, I I liked your attempt on that with the large parking area. I get that. But this is in a residential neighborhood, and I think it'd probably be better for the area if that area was paved for the parking, but I'm just one vote.
Mr. Blick?
So on parcel 3, what retaining?
Mr. Blick, can you speak in your microphone, please?
Apologize. Bring it over here. So on parcel 3, what's going to be the south barrier retaining wall or suggestion? Because that house is about 10 feet from that property line. And if you have headlights pulling in, it's going to be right into somebody's window. So I'm just wondering, are you putting something in between there?
The design intent is to have, again, metal panels providing a solid screening for that
Okay.
sole purpose.
Sounds good.
Correct.
Because I think right now they're just using container storage right there right now, aren't they?
It's been a while since I've been there, Mr. Blick. I would think that is the residence to the south's privacy fence, just a standard 6-foot wood fence there today. We would buffer that with our own screening fence to the north of that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? Mr. Dool?
Just so I understand what the proposed use of this is going to be, so the building on the corner of Estelle and Central, is that going to remain there, or are they going to remove that building? Is there any plans for that?
The plan is to retain that building for the indefinite future. If Mr. Ramsey, the developer, also owns additional properties on the west side of Estelle. So if parking becomes an issue for whatever reason, perhaps a developer takes it over and he doesn't share Mr. Ramsey's desire to limit parking, then there would be additional areas that could be used for ancillary parking. So everything in all discussions that I have had with the clients have indicated that building will stay.
Expansion is going to include some containers to the west of where they're at right now. Is that correct?
That is not correct. They are there today. That is correct. Parcel 2 was developed in conformance with the existing LC zoning district and required no other types of modifications. There would be the potential for additional units in Parcel 3 if that would ever come to fruition, not for retail purposes, but perhaps for an office.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions from the commission?
For clarification.
Yes, Mr. Florence.
You will take that sign off of the back side of that, on the south side of that container?
So the sign that we spoke about earlier, Mr. Florence, is located about right here where my cursor is. It's my understanding from both the applicant as well as staff, and I can certainly stand corrected. This property here is used as an Airbnb rental, and I believe the owner of that property is perhaps looking at changing the zoning on that piece of property as well. Our intent is to legalize that sign, not to remove that sign.
As is, you received a notice of violation from the zoning department per that sign. Am I correct?
I am not certain of that. I think
That is correct.
Other questions? Mr. Richardson?
Russ, is that sign lit?
no, sir. It's spray painted on the back of that panel,
Okay.
is my understanding.
And I think Mr. Florence's concern might be if it were lit at night, is that?
Well, no, it's a violation of the sign code as is.
Yeah.
That is a residential area south of there, and there's no signage is allowed on that side of the building.
My concern would be if it's lit at night. I'm not concerned about it, during the daytime. I was out there today at noon looking around, and frankly, I didn't even notice it. But I think being lit at night would be an issue, and I don't know how we control that at this point, Scott.
You could control that with the PUD.
Just require it not to be lit, approve it with the, would it be all right with Russ that we don't have a lit sign on that side of the?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So that might be a way to get around it, is just include that as a condition of the PUD.
Okay, other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this case? If you'll step forward, state your name and address. And you'll have 3 minutes. That's all right, don't be nervous.
Hi, my name is Danielle Johnson. I live at 434 North Volusia. My house sits about, where am I at? My house is right here, right across from the Airbnb property. So I'm the very first house on the left-hand side of Volusia. I'd just like to say, I've lived there since November of 2017, and we had no word of Revolution even coming to our neighborhood. And that's about a couple months later is when we got Revolution. About a year later, actually, is when they opened up. We have had issues with parking on our street since they opened. It is an everyday thing. They park all along, how do I go back? I messed up. This way. Okay, so they park all along Volusia Street. There's a stop sign right here, right at Central and Volusia, and cars park literally all the way up to that point of the sign. I don't know if you guys are aware, there's bikes that sit along this side as well, so trying to turn onto our street first and foremost is almost impossible. When there are other cars coming this direction, we have to stop for them to either turn out or sometimes be stuck in traffic because we can't turn. That's a huge problem. Down here in our residential area on our street, cars come and park and block our driveways. My neighbors live right next, their driveway or their street, my driveway is like this. So when I have cars parked directly on both sides, it is almost impossible to back out because they can also park directly behind my driveway. So sometimes I have to go all the way down my cul-de-sac just to come around. This was a quiet neighborhood, extremely quiet. If we would have moved to a ballpark neighborhood, we would have expected something like this. There's absolutely nowhere for these people to park. There's a small area back here in the alleyway where they can park right now. Other than that, they park on our street. It's very frustrating, and from what I just heard today, it sounds like it's going to get worse. We are absolutely not for a nightclub in our neighborhood. This is on Central and Volusia. This is not anywhere that there should be a nightclub at. We have children in our neighborhood, and I feel like that's going to increase parking and cause more problems. We've had theft, we've had trash thrown in our yards, all kind of things. So I just think that there's something more that needs to be done with parking, and they are not doing that. So that's all I have to say. Oh,
Thank you. Questions on the commission, Mr. Blick.
So you did a great job up there, by the way. I was going to say, parcel 3, do you think that might help with some additional parking that's parking on the street by having that parking lot over there?
I did until I heard that the building wasn't going to be removed, the funeral home. We were thinking the funeral home would be moved, would bring more parking. That's not being removed, so I don't see, just knowing how much space there is to park there. Parcel 3, it may help a little bit, but like you said, that would be for employees and things of that such, not so much more for the actual Revolution traffic. And unless there was signage, I think if we had signage maybe saying residential parking only on our street, and then directing parking, specific parking for them to go to, because if there's overflow at the parcel, then the parcel 3, then they'll come to our street no matter what. So signage, I think, would help great, and especially right up here at the stop sign. I think that's a violation of the law anyway, so as well as parking that close to our driveways.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Other questions from the commission? Mr. Richardson.
Is there parking on both sides of Estelle as well as Volusia?
I'm not too sure about Estelle. Anytime I've drove past Estelle, I have not seen as much traffic as we have on Volusia, just because the entrances are more accessible from the Volusia street. So that's their main go-to, is to go to Revolution instead of Estelle.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? You'll have to step up and state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Ezekiel Hernandez. I live at 430 North Volusia. At this point, I have nothing to say. She pretty much stated all the problems, and just want to second that. We have a pretty big issue here.
Hey, any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay, seeing none. Russ, you have one more?
She decided.
Okay.
My name's Yesenia Lopez, and I live at 430 North Volusia, and they pretty much said everything. We do want a sign, and we are starting a petition because it's ridiculous. You know, we can't even back out of our freaking driveway. Who wants that? That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience wish to speak on this issue? Bring back the applicant for rebuttal. You have 2 minutes, Russ.
Thank you. Again, Russ Avey, agent for the applicant. The parking issue I can certainly identify with. There may be some things that we can work with the city engineering department on as far as signage in these situations. I just simply can't address that now. I will say to the three speakers from the neighborhood that we do have this. This is the first meeting on this application, so we do have District Advisory Board number 1 and the first Monday in August to rediscuss it in front of a different group of people. So perhaps by that time I'll be able to, at that meeting, address it a little bit better, or at least have an idea. But again, we are adding parking. It seems like we're adding paved parking at this point. And the only other thing that I would like to spend some time on again, especially to you three, is we have a zoning code that has a number of different definitions, and everything under the sun has to fit under one of those definitions. So when I am up here saying nightclub, it can literally be across the spectrum of what you think of when you think of nightclub. In this particular instance, we need to be we are asking for not a nightclub, but a drinking establishment for the service of wine and hard cider, if you will. So these are, how would I state it? These are local producers of wine that simply want an outlet, like a tasting room, if you will, for their product. And we have it fairly well defined in the planned unit development. I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions related to that.
Sorry, no. Sorry, no. Questions for the speaker?
So I ask for something for her. That area is zoned for a DE or a DER, right?
This site is not, this site is a planned unit development, so it's going to be zoned whatever is approved here today and then ultimately by city council. Not a DE, Scott, help me out.
But it is not eligible for a DE license at this point without approval of this amendment.
But someone would, CSB went through and they just.
Yes, that's correct. They are a DE.
This facility, this drinking room, if you will, isn't intended to have any other type of food service, so that would preclude us or necessitate us getting the DE.
And that's what sometimes I like to remind the neighborhood is that if someone decides instead of a nightclub to call themselves a DER, they can go till 2 a.m. instead of you working with them as a DE that can have limited hours.
Certainly, and to be perfectly honest, as I was sitting here this afternoon, I should have grabbed Stan on his way out. I do not have any idea how late the restaurants or any other part of this development stays open. Perhaps Ms. Johnson would help me, but this isn't like a standard nightclub where we're looking to go past midnight, go to 2 a.m. or any of that. This room would close down with the center as well. I don't know if that's 11 o'clock at night. I don't know if that's 10 o'clock at night.
Back to the committee for comments or action. Mr.
I have a
McKay.
question. This is the staff. If these folks are having problems with their parking on the street, can't they make an application if they get everybody signed to change the parking on that street?
Yes, there are options for that.
So, folks, would you explain to them what they need to do?
Who would they speak to?
It's through the traffic engineer in public works.
If they make a petition and people sign it to say we would like to have no parking on whatever one side of the street or so.
Probably the best bet is to contact the traffic engineer and ask them to come look at the situation and help them find a solution.
They went to your office when they left here today, you could give them the name and number of who they would need to talk to?
Absolutely.
Okay, you got that? Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I was also going to address Mr. Richardson's question in that, yes, Estelle also allows parking on both sides of the street. Both Volusia and Estelle do by city ordinance, and it's got nothing to do with the zoning. And since it's public parking, anybody can go there at any time and park. Now, there's kind of common courtesy rules, the rod of how you should be handling that. Some people will pay any attention to that, but there are other places around the community that those are issues. And I appreciate Mr. McKay pointing out that it's actually through other actions, not the zoning laws, where you can address those kind of things, including actions by city council to reduce or eliminate parking. The flip side of that is that when people do that, that means they can't park there either. If it's posted no parking, it doesn't make any difference whether you live there or not. So you got to be careful about what you do with that kind of stuff.
Anybody on the committee ready to make a motion?
On the driveway.
Is there anybody on the committee ready to make a motion?
I move that we approve the PUD with the sign concern that we have, that it not be a lit sign, and that parcel 3 be a paved surface.
We have a motion by Mr. Green, a second by Mr. Blick. Any further discussion? Lawrence?
Just on that one sign, also was a prohibition of any rooftop signs in that zoning.
Amend that, your motion to conclude that?
Absolutely.
Second agrees with that? Okay, so no rooftop signs as a part of that motion. Mr. McKay?
Clarification, are we talking about hard surface, or are we talking about, he said paved?
Well, in the code, it's asphalt or asphalted
Okay,
concrete
that's all.
or, yeah.
Okay, I think have an understanding. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously, 9-0. Item 4.6, next item is 4.7, zone 2019-00021.
It's been approved on
Approved.
consent.
Okay, 4.8, 00023, zone change. Dave, you got that one?
Yes, sir.
Go.
This request is to change the zoning from LC to GC on the, what I consider the south side of Douglas in the 500 block west.
Dave, let me interrupt you. We're not sure who asked to hear this one.
Mr. Foster did.
Mr. Foster's gone. Does anybody on the commission actually want to hear this one? And then is there a motion to take by consent?
So moved.
Hold on, do we have a,
Anybody in the audience want to talk about it?
you want to
You're
talk
the
about this one?
applicant though, aren't you?
Okay, then we will go right ahead. I'm sorry. Don't want to take that away from you. Sorry.
Well, the request is to rezone this from LC to GC, primarily to accommodate
Want it to
the
be approved, right? Okay.
staff reports
We have a
recommend
quorum?
approval.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes, eight.
We have a quorum? Eight's enough?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Is there a second? We have a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Approved.
Who's the second? Thanks for waiting all day. Right here.
Mr. Blakely? Okay. That shows that as the last one on my agenda. Is there anything else? We're adjourned.